Okay, welcome everyone. We are so excited today to be sharing with you on IT Service Management Forum, which uh, today is one of my favorite days. This is the birthday present. You didn't know this. This was my birthday present, having Troy come in and present today. Many people don't know that years ago when I was working at Sun Microsystems, it was Troy that taught me everything substantial I learned about IT service management. And through the years, it's been my delight to follow Troy's path, one of the top leaders, thought leaders in our world of ITSM. So we got a great session planned for today. But first, I'm going to introduce Charles, and we'll tell you a little bit about ITSMF and what we're doing nationally, but also what we're doing here in Chicago as we're starting to stand up our new chapter. And Charles is our president. Charles, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'm going to bring up the deck and share that. Sir? And do let me know when you guys see my screen.
Yeah, we can see the presentation. There you go.
There we have it. Okay, so let me go back to, there we go. Charles, over to you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Don. Don, can you actually go into, are you in presentation mode or are you in?
I thought I was in presentation mode. Am I kidding myself? Are you guys seeing presentation mode or are you seeing the slides?
It's showing the speaker notes over on the right.
That's annoying. Okay. Let me see if I can change the settings on this.
Just run slideshow, you should be fine.
Yep, that's what I was running, but it wasn't showing. It was there. Is that
there
working?
you go? Yes.
Yay. Okay, good. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so everyone, welcome to a meeting with the Chicago chapter of ITSMF. We're actually the local league for this area. We're going to have a great presenter today for our organization, and I wanted to just, before we start, give you an overview of exactly, what you're getting yourself into. When you hear ITSMF, people wonder, what do we do and what's the value? What do we bring? I think if you really look at it and think about it, every organization, we have a number of technical professionals within the organization, but what we have to also look at is how do we run and manage the service effectively? So the best practices that's probably the underpinning is what we call the IT information library, which is called ITIL, which a lot of people, they know about and they hear about, and operationalizing that or putting that into true fact and form is pretty difficult. So what this organization allows you to do is to meet with professionals that helps you grow and develop in those areas, understand the experiences that we've had, and take some of the best practices that are outlined within the IT Information Library or ITIL and execute those within the organization. So coming and becoming a part of this organization enables you to become connected with a number of individuals who have experience. For example, we have Dawn, as you've met. She's done this for many years. She supports the IT service management, or I'm going to say the service management environment holistically through helping resources get engaged with customers by helping staff. She also performs a number of activities that range from organizational change to actually driving some of the service practices within ITIL or within service management, as well as she helps really just pull people together and connect them. So she's valuable. And that also Troy, as you see, who will be our speaker today, we just found out that Troy and we have history together. While I was at Microsoft, he was actually helping develop what we call the Microsoft Operations Framework, which is a ITIL-based solution that we help develop the frameworks for and help companies grow and develop leveraging Microsoft tools and services in the past. So that's great. Mindy, as we know, she's our Atlanta chapter president, I believe, and she's in, and she brings a wealth of knowledge as well. So what this allows us to do is to really connect to individuals who can provide value to you and help you execute on your endeavors. So we encourage you to really look at this and consider becoming a member of our particular leg, which is the Chicago, which is, I'm going to say, is the best. Mindy, you hear that? When we get people, of course. And if not, there's other chapters that's local to you. What you're seeing now is the upcoming events that we have. We have planned. We have today, as you know, you'll hear from Troy. He comes from Pink Elephant, and he'll have his introduction in a moment. You have Jim Dubois, who I worked with in the past on several occasions, and he's going to be a speaker and help us understand how the business of IT and how business alignment and business transformation can work within organizations. And then you have also David Cannon, who's been around quite a bit within the ITIL ecosystem, and he's grown, developed, he's contributed to a number of pieces of best practice that I think it would be great for you all to have an encounter with him to really understand how that works. Next slide, please.
Yeah. One more call out for those on the call is in June, we are planning a panel event. This is going to be led by Dave Polterock, but we're going to also have expert panelists from across the industry. We know how important critical communications strategy is. It's not just an IT thing anymore. It's an IT, it's service management, it's marketing. It's certainly health and community crisis based. How can we develop and have a ready critical communication strategy? That's going to be our topic for June. We don't know the date yet because we're really trying to find out what's the best time for you guys to meet. So the two things we'd like from you guys as a takeaway for today is when are the best days and times for us to have these events? And two, who do you suggest we invite into a C-level panel with David to discuss critical communication strategies? So that's one more thing I wanted to add before you go on.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good plugger. Let's also
Thanks.
kind of tell in on that. That was a great statement about that. That panel is really going to become invaluable to some degree because what you're going to see is you're going to see what we call service management, or the concept of service management, move outside of what the traditional realm is, which is IT. And we have to really understand that we are now working digital and not IT. Organizations they're digitally enabled. So service management is really like the lifeblood that keeps this stuff going and providing value to customers. So that whole service value chain concept and everything we do, once you start looking at communication is not something that works within an IT umbrella. It works at an enterprise level. So it's something to really think about and consider, and hopefully you all will join. Let's move forward on that. So, yeah, so I think what we're saying here is ITM SMF is an organization that's global in nature. But what we have here is outlined some of the chapters that we have within, or local interest groups that we have within the continental US. I would encourage that if you are in those areas to seek out your chapter there. If not, if you enjoy the personalities that you're getting from the Chicago chapter, feel free to become a member of our organization or our chapter, our league. And we will definitely embrace you. And I'm quite sure there's a number of things that you will get out of here. You'll get insights and trainings and learn about events with some really great individuals, as well as you will grow and really learn this community and how we work. Sometimes larger cities and larger areas such as Chicago, you get a lot more opportunity than other areas. I'm not going to say this is better than the other, but I would encourage you to take a look at all of the leagues and see which one is your fit. The next item that we have that we're looking at with regards to the next move forward events, the next area is just think about, hey, joining ITSMF, because SMF can provide you with a number of values. You see what we have here. It's just, your ability to grow and develop. You gain insight into the latest issues and concerns and discussion points, as well as there's a lot more associated with it, as well as it helps you establish your career as a service management professional. And I'm going to say this, a technology or digital professional in your area. The last thing, if you want to move forward.
Sure, sir.
Is essentially that the membership fees are fairly moderate. There's a $189 membership fee for the professional, whereas we also have student incorporates available. But I would say don't let the price get you, but look at the value that's associated with it. We would like for you to join the organization because, once again, I'm quite sure that we can contribute to your growth and your development, as well as you can contribute to ours as well. That's about it. I think the key message here is really to get involved. So I'm going to let you, Don, introduce Troy DuMoulin, and you can just give him all of his accolades that he deserves based
He
on some
deserves
of the
so much.
earlier.
So, and we thank you all for being with us today. Yes, we are Chicago. Yes, we are national. Yes, we are global. And today's an example of that. We've got the power of our Atlanta chapter. We've got Troy coming to us from Canada. The reality is, while we might live in a certain location, as Troy and I were talking about this morning, isn't that really just where we put our mail and maybe our laptop? Let us connect and talk about the power of best practices. Our industry has changed by leaps and bounds just in the past 3 years. It is my delight to introduce Troy, who's on the cutting edge of the importance of the human experience now more than never, ever in the history of service management. That's important. Troy is essential to the world of ITSM. Troy taught me almost everything I learned about ITSM early on. His influence and his thought leadership for decades has influenced many. I would not be where I was were it not for Troy. So this is my birthday present to myself is, Troy, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about how truly awesome you are. But thank you for being with us today, and we can't wait to hear from you. I'm going to go off video and on mute. Sir.
All right. If you don't mind swapping, I'll share my screen here, Don. Very good. Thank you so much. It's a delight to be with you folks today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. A little bit about the session today, and just a brief introduction of who I represent. So I work for an organization that is called Pink Elephant, and I'm the Vice President of Research and Development, and Pink Elephant has been a fundamental kind of voice in the service management community, well, since the beginning. We were actually there in the kind of origin story of ITIL and ITSM back in the 1980s with the British government, and we're headquartered now in Toronto, Canada. The role that I get to play at Pink Elephant over the last couple of decades is that I'm the Vice President of Research and Development. And the best way to understand what that actually means is that it's connected to our mission. Our mission is that we research, document, and promote best practices. That's why we exist. We do that through education, we do that through conferences and consulting, but the key of that mission is that it's plural best practices. There are so many reference models we can refer to when we think about service management. Charles mentioned Microsoft Operations Framework, and that was over 20 years ago. You know that, Charles, right? And I was part of that, but I've also had the opportunity to be in the room where it happened, because we don't just talk about these frameworks, we actually get involved in the communities of practice like the ITSMF from the earliest days. But we get involved in the community such as the MOF community. I've had the opportunity to be personally a contributing author to the ITIL framework for the last 3 major versions, and was actually one of 12 people globally for the ITIL 4 architecture team. I'm also a COBIT author, lean author in the sense of lean IT, and also a speaker in the Agile and the DevOps communities. And so it's really about how we synthesize all of this. And that's what I call service management. If you think about it, a set of specialized organizational capabilities for providing value to our customers in the form of service. Well, those specialized capabilities come across all those frameworks. It's not one book, it's not one reference model, it's really the synergy of all of the above. Now, that being said, as Don has mentioned, as Charles has mentioned, we've been at this for a while, folks. In fact, I've personally been doing this for over 25 years. And I've been recently reflecting on some of that, because, you know, that kind of puts you in a reflective mode. And I have to be honest with you, folks, it's a struggle sometimes to see the forward momentum, because, you know, after 20 years, many organizations that we work with can barely spell the words incident management. And there's so much more. You know, the concept of, you know, it breaks, we need to fix it. It's a basic thing. Can I get you another one if you need one? Request. It's a basic thing. But yet organizations are still struggling with that. And I began to focus on why. What's the reason? It's not because we haven't really understood what good looks like, or, understood how to do it. In fact, my favorite mantra these days is, okay, we have the knowledge, we have more books than we can shake a stick at, literally, right? We've got the intelligence, you guys are awesome. We've got the resources, we've got the tools, in fact, more than we need. So what's left? Why is it such a struggle? It really comes down to this: organizational will, culture, and the leadership that programs both of those. This is the biggest issue, folks. Until we actually start looking at the challenge, that the real core challenge we're having is that we simply don't want to, we're not going to really get past this issue. Now, a lot of it comes down to the fact that we struggle as a culture with even the concept of collaboration. In fact, I've been teaching a major university recently, and we talk about what's the biggest challenges we face in IT service management in general. And always, it's about silos and collaboration. It's not about knowledge, not about tools. And so this is what, kind of generated this session, which I've delivered a couple of times now, and it really speaks to people. And it really comes down to the basic question of, how big is your definition of us? Where does your language of us stop and they and them enter your mind? Now, it's not about the fact that there's a they or a them. There's always a they and a them. It's not that at all. It's about, where does your us stop? And is it just restricted to your functional silo within your org chart? Because we're going to talk about that us probably means more than that. You see, when there is us, I get the whole, share process, share tools, share whatever. But with them, well, they do them, we do us. So yeah, you do you, I'll do me. So it really comes down to this basic concept, and I want to explore that in this session with you. So here's the agenda for our session today. First, we're going to talk about what is a team, actually, by definition. How do we build these trust-based relationships that can expand this concept of us? And then a major driver for dropping the silo is to build what we can describe as a purpose or mission-driven organization. Well, we might subordinate individual goals and individual truth to greater truth and shared goals, maybe. Then we're going to talk about cross-functional teams, because in essence, structure dictates architecture, Conway's law. It also dictates your culture. We'll talk about how do we build structure that actually enables larger senses of us. And then I'm going to introduce you to a kind of cool book that kind of puts a spin on this whole new view of operational excellence as an us game. We'll talk about that in the last bullet. So here we go. Let's start with basic definitions. A team. So here's the definition of a team, Ketchen, Botch, and Smith. A team is a small number of people with complementary skills. So individuals have different skills to contribute, who are committed to a common purpose. We have shared mission goals, a set of performance goals. We have shared measures and outcome-based goals, and the approach, which is a common process, a common set of tools, and maybe a common priority model for which we hold each other mutually accountable. Now, reflect on this for a moment with me. A team is a number of people with complementary skills committed to a common purpose, common goals, common approach for which we hold each other mutually accountable. Does that really describe the last cross-functional project you were on? Because here's the thing. This is a mindset. It's not just a label. It's so easy to assume we've got a subject matter expert team. We've pulled them together from the various constituent parts of the organization. We've got all the requisite skills, but are they a team by this definition? Because just assembling a group of subject matter people doesn't mean you have a team. Team is a mental state. It's not a label you slap on a group of people. The challenge with this is that if we each individual think, oh, I'm in here for just my individual contribution, and once that's done, I'm out of here. That's you do you, I'll do me. This is going to be an issue when we want to think about velocity. As you can see, the definition here is speed with direction, right? So if we're all going off in our different directions, because we have different senses of values, beliefs, practices, or priorities, right? Then we're going to have a problem with velocity. This is going to be an issue. I mean, think about it. You have this organization, this complex system of different stakeholder groups, and they're all contributing their various parts, but they have a completely different set of values, beliefs, practices, tools, priorities, and they're all doing agile. Which is to be able to pivot and spin at need. But if they're all doing that individually, differently, you can kill organizational velocity even with agile, because the only way to be agile is as a team, as a system. So this concept of how wide is your us is core to, even if I would accept that I'm going to have a common process. Now, another aspect of how wide is your us is going to be where you believe you can create and have trust among stakeholders, right? So where is my boundary of trust? And so we have to explore, what is a trust-based relationship really between two people, two human beings? And so this is an interesting model. It talks about, we're going to trust another person, a partner of any level of community, by the way. There's got to be three things that are true about this relationship between you and me. First of all, I have to demonstrate the capability to fulfill the role of partner that you expect. So if I'm not able to, in a capability concept, it's difficult to trust me. I have skills and knowledge and competence. Then there's the commitment. Okay, is this to an us commitment we're talking about here, or is it a you commitment, as long as it's, I don't know, it makes sense for you, right? As long as it makes sense for you, you're in. After that, okay, no, not working for me anymore. I'm taking my cookies and I'm going somewhere else. So unless I sense this sense of trust on us, it's difficult to trust you here. And the third aspect of this is consistency. I mean, even before I enter into a relationship with you, I'd like to see that this is the kind of person you are. You're capable and have an us sense. Then I come into this relationship with you, I would hope that you keep those things and you don't revert to the it's me thing, because you got to show me the proof is in the pudding. This is the show me state right here, consistency over time. So to have trust really between one group or another, even in the same brand, all three things have to be true, because the moment your commitment is to you and not to us, yeah, I'm having trouble with the trust thing. So let's think about relationships now in the context of an organization trying to be a team, establishing common mission goals, having common, customer constituent experience they want to deliver. To do that, we'd have to examine carefully what kind of relationships we have and what kind of relationships we need if we're actually going to be quote unquote team. So here's three types. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just relationships. We'll start with transactional. Okay, so transactionals, we have two organizations coming together, they meet at the edges, but there's not really any interconnection, and it's not a bad relationship. There's many transactional relationships we have. You sell pizza, I like to eat pizza. I've got money to pay for pizza, I like your pizza, so meet me at the door, I'll buy your pizza, thank you for your pizza. If it goes well, I'll order more. Otherwise, I'll see other people. So that's a transactional relationship. Cooperative is one step up from that, where we got two entities. We have to understand and try to work on shared goals. That's awesome. So I need to have some insight into the provider, and so that I know what they provide. They need to have some insight into me, so we can do personas, and we can talk about design effectiveness and all of that good stuff. But it's really two organizations that are coming together for convenience, and as long as it works, well, that works. If the love starts to fade, so long and thanks for all the fish. We're seeing other people. And so this is an interesting context. It's a cooperative relationship, shared goals, but not shared risk. Collaborative relationships. Now we're all in. I mean, we're merging our goals. We're also accepting combined risk. We're becoming one organization for the greater transcendent purpose. In fact, we're willing to subordinate individual goals and priorities to something greater or transcendental. This is a collaborative relationship. If you want a metaphor, I'm dating, I'm engaged, I'm married. But the problem becomes when we have relationships where we need a cooperative or a collaborative and we're transactional. Or one person's thinking we're in this together, collaborative, the other one's saying cooperative, yeah, I'm good, but as long as the love's here, we're fine. Otherwise, I'm out of here. And so where organizational relationships, individual relationships fail is when we understand, well, we need one form of relationship, but yet we have others. I'm needing a collaborative approach, but it's talk to the hand, meet me at the door on a transactional basis. So if you're inside a brand, right? Ideally, we're looking at collaborative relationships, folks. Now, if you're plugging in a third-party provider like an MSP or a cloud provider, probably cooperative is the best you're ever going to get, because you do have two organizations with two separate goals and you're mutually working together for convenience. That's fine. Again, these are not good nor bad. The question is, what kind of relationships do you need to actually have a sense of us that's not going to be negative towards overall mission goals? Obviously, this is a relational model that happens at all levels of community. The challenge we have is we have to understand that human beings basically determine what they will do or what they won't do based on three primary factors. So the first and kind of virtuous way we think about it is that if we share some virtuous transcendental goal, some greater purpose, then we may subordinate the impulse to personal preference or bias to a greater good, right? This is the concept of working towards a transcendent goal, a true north concept. And this is where Stephen Covey says, we start with the end in mind. And if we start with the end in mind, first habit of highly effective people, we might just maybe, subordinate an impulse to a greater good. And this is where shared truth, where we the people find this self-evident, might actually help us to subordinate a personal preference to something greater. But that would mean you have an organization that has shared values, shared beliefs, shared priorities, a sense of shared mission goals, a shared purpose, and a leadership that connects their people to that purpose. Because if leaders don't connect their people to a greater purpose, then you have to ask yourself, who is the purpose? The answer is you. So if we don't have this sense of true north, then there's really just two other ways an individual, a team, a group will make decisions on, what am I going to do today or tomorrow? One is external pressure. This is the concept where the pressure of the moment drives behavior. I just move with the wind. So using the wind metaphor and the naval concept here, sailor, I'm a sailor, you're in Chicago, you know about sailing. Right. If we have a true north, I have a set of directions. I have a direction, a target state. That's where I'm going over there. And even if the winds are blowing on the lake, I'm going to, navigate by tacking back and forth, zigzagging, still towards an intentional goal. So even though I must adjust my sails, I'm still moving with intent to somewhere I've decided to go. But being blown by the wind, which is external pressures, means just survival. The problem with that is, movement in any random direction is not necessarily virtuous towards any kind of goal other than to survive for the moment. The third dimension is probably the most problematic and where we get into trouble with this sense of how wide is our sense of us. So if you're not that person or organization that moves towards shared goals, true north, you're not that organization that's being blown by the wind and you change your mind like your underwear, then the third aspect is pretty unidirectional. It's pretty constant too. It's all decisions are made through the lens of what's in it for me. Self-interest. Now there is no C called shared commitment. So obviously there's not going to be a lot of trust beyond my tribal boundary. So the problem with self-interest, folks, obviously, other than it's selfish, is that if you take that far enough, you will justify genocide. Now, admittedly, there are times in life we have to make decisions on all three dimensions. I'm asking you, how do you and your teams actually make decisions on a normal kind of basis as opposed to exception? Because unless we actually are, identifying a target state and a shared transcendental purpose, we're driven by purpose or mission objectives, then we just revert to the other two, and there is no us. This sense of us drives directly into any capability your organization has for transformation. So here's 3 different models. This is a set of images from a book called High Velocity IT. It's one of the intermediate specialist books that have been published by the ITIL framework. And it really describes 3 levels of transformation. Let's define transformation for a moment. To transform is to pivot, to try something completely different, to go another direction. I was going this direction, I'm now going that direction. And we need to transform, as Charles talked about, to create digital channels and digital ability. We need to transform how we do stuff and how we even think of us. The thing is, the definition of us will determine your effective ability to transform whoever is us. So model 1 is departmental transformation, a functional transformation. We're transforming our software development team by adopting agile pivot type processes. We're transforming our infrastructure group by enabling platform and infrastructure as a service, self-service models. We're transforming our organization within an architecture team by adopting some enterprise type of approach as opposed to silo or technical domain models. But really that's tribal or silo transformation. The service desk is optimizing on KCS. It's a transformation of a specific function. It's not bad, it's just narrow. Then we've got model 2. Now our us is we the people of IS/IT. Oh, but you're over there called the business. You're not us. Even though we share the same brand, we automate most business processes. I'm IT, you're the business. But at least at model 2, the dev and the ops have come together here, and it's just we people of IT, enterprise IT. Here's the problem, folks. Working with hundreds of organizations over decades, I've come to believe that enterprise IT is a myth. We have no such thing. We don't govern enterprise IT, we govern silos as silos. So our sense of us at model 2 at least be us, IT, but it's still not ideal, because if we're going to enter a digital strategy, as Charles mentioned, which is not unique to IT strategies, this is where a business organization wants to engage in new digital channels for product and service delivery to its outside constituents and completely get into new business opportunities through digital means, I would have to realize that front end website, and I hit that buy me now button, is going to set of actions provisioning all the way through to the back end technology systems and back again, meaning the sense of us, if we're actually going to succeed at digital transformation, would actually have to be us, the brand. And both, all constituents would understand that that's our us. And wherever your sense of us is, well, that's where you get the idea that shared process, shared approach, shared tools, shared priority actually works. But the moment you say they, them, they can do them, we do us. You do you, I'll do me. So this is a fundamental challenge, because we are tribal more than we are a sense of us. This is a critical consideration. And leadership, by the way, is the only one who creates this systems thinking. Now, a little bit about the history of where all this us comes from, just to give you some insight. Why do we struggle so much with silo-based approaches? Well, you may or not know this, but our current org structures as we have today, our modern org charts, actually have their genesis or origin story in the early 1900s. And actually, as you can see, maybe even late 1800s, where we have an industry going through massive transformation. What's happening in the economy is we're moving from a rural-based economy to a city mass manufacturing type of economy. It's the Industrial Revolution. And our friends here, Adam Smith and Frederick Taylor, kind of the pioneers of their day of scientific management, the authors of books like Wealth of Nation and Division of Labor and Task Specialization. They said, what we got to do here, if we're going to struggle through this transformational period, is we have to take this complex value chain and break it down into chunks, because we are struggling here. We have 3 primary challenges. First of all, our workforce. Well, we're struggling with knowledge and skills because they know how to build a barn and how to plant a field, but not how to operate complex machinery. Second, we're struggling with communication. I mean, we've got complex supply chain, and the best thing we have for communication is one step up from Pony Express, ... right? Telegraph. And the third complication, I mean, automation, you're lucky to have hydraulics. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it easy on our folks coming off the farm, and we're not going to try to tell them about the whole system. We're going to lean into something they're very familiar with, which is called guild-based societies. Because, you know, if you want to get a job, you have to find the guild and enter the guild as an apprentice. And then, you know, you move up the guild to an intermediate. And then eventually, if you play your cards right, you can be the master of the guild or a master on the council. And you can then bless the little Padawans as they come through your very narrow focused orientation around test specialization. We're going to lean into that. That's what our folks know. And so that's what they did, folks. They created vertical org charts based on areas of specialization. Okay, you guys up front, you're dealing with customer engagement stuff. You're going to be over here in the org chart. And you guys over there, you're going to do the big thinking, the prioritization to figure out who's going to pay for what and how we're going to supply it. You're up there in the office of the CIO. And over here, you folks are going to be the design builders. You're going to do that stuff over there in that part of the org. And over here, you guys are going to run stuff, operate stuff, and if it breaks, you need to fix the stuff. And so we structured our org charts around task specialization. Now, the blessing of that is it doubles down on specialization. So we become masters of specialization. The downside of it is that we lost sight of the fact that we live in a complex integrated value system. And our org charts basically reverted us down to, this is what I do. I put a bumper on a car. She does the axle. They over there do the steering wheel. And if they come along and ask me about anything else but bumpers, talk to the handman. I'm the bumper guy. You're the axle person. And so our organizational structures, which then, you know, converted into functional job descriptions, this is what you do. You put an application, you do a database, and you do a server. And then our performance management systems that only measure us on individual contribution, double down on it again. And so our org chart basically reinforce a sense of very narrow us. And it even gets worse because I only measure people on individual contribution. A friend of mine, Gary Case, once said, be careful what you measure. You might just get it. So this is a problem, folks. Our current organizational structures, our performance management systems basically create tribes. But yet we create value via horizontal systems. Paradox. Now, it's not like we haven't known how to get around this for, like, I don't know, ever. Because if we want to get something done fast, we know what to do. We assemble a team, a cross-functional project team, and we'll call it a project team first. We'll come back to the word product. We're going to bring together, you know, the right people from all the different constituent skill sets, complementary skill sets. And we're going to have shared goals, shared values, shared priorities here for a period of time called the project. And for the moment, because now we've got the right people thinking possibly team, if it's led that way, we might actually be able to go from A to Z quickly because I'm not worrying about this tribal handoff thing. I actually have a group of people, you know, with a shared goal trying to attack a transcendental purpose. And we've got the right people in the mix, and it's led by a leader who understands they need the skills of all of the above to actually get it done. And they're using their understanding of voice of customer, voice of business, voice of regulation, voice of process. These are the 4 voices of Lean to understand that the total product backlog isn't just VOC, but all of the other things I have to do, like regulatory and, you know, technical debt reduction, et cetera. And the team isn't just software development, because a software factory is not the total value chain. It's a piece of it, it's a key part of it, but it's not the totality of it. And so if you're interested in this concept called cross-functional product team, it's just project teams that don't go away. Because just when we started to kick butt in all 4 gears here, you know, we went through the whole storming, norming, performing. Well, it's a project team. Disband it. So what we're talking about now is these cross-functional product teams, which are team of teams, because you have a sense of self-identity, a sense of team and us around a shared outcome-based goal. But I'm also a member of another team. by the way, we do this all the time because you're part of team home and you're also part of teamwork, and you figure out how to make that work. So you think we invented this? Not at all. The reference for this goes back to the lean manufacturing movement of the 1980s. Jeff Sutherland, in his book, Agile Scrum, How to Do Twice the Work in Half the Time, is very, very open about most of what he wrote in the Agile Scrum book was lifted directly from lean manufacturing. We're just discovering it now. Go figure. Structure indicates culture, or our sense of us. So another interesting premise is when we populate these teams, quote unquote, again, it's more of a mental state than it is a label. What kind of people do you want on a team? Well, we're going to talk about that now by talking what we call T-shaped individuals. It's actually not, team and T is just, that's actually not related. It's just, it's interesting that we both start with T, but it's not exactly what I mean. So this is an idea, again, that goes back actually thousands of years to a Greek poet that talked about the difference between the hedgehog and the fox, where the hedgehog was, always responding in one simple way. The fox was able to morph and to go with the environment. So we'll talk about what that means here. You got three types of people: personas, personalities. You got your generalists. This is the Jill, the jack of many trades, the master of none. But before you start to kind of diss on the GP here, remember, you go to a general practitioner for most of your medical diagnosis. Why? Because your general practitioner has a great awareness of, and interest in, and empathy for greater systems integration. She is involved in a practice that looks at the total interaction of multiple component parts of your body so they can do better cross-functional diagnosis. But you'd not go to a GP for your cataract surgery, right? You'd go to a specialist. In fact, you can't get to the specialist unless you actually get, recommended by a GP. Now you go to this pure specialist. There's two types of specialists. You got the pure specialist, where the only thing they think about in life is their area of specialization, right? That's the only thing that's valuable. Now, the problem with that is that the eyeball is kind of connected to the rest of the body. Just saying. And if that specialist doesn't want to know about or isn't interested in the rest of the body, this could cause a problem. So if you're a fan of The Big Bang Theory, the television show, this is Sheldon Cooper. I mean, if it's string theory, he's all in, but anything else, waste of his time. So what you're not looking for is a pure specialist who doesn't have interest or empathy for the rest of us. This is the brilliant jerk, by the way. What you're looking for is a T-shaped persona where they bring a specialization to the team. You need their specialization. But at the top of the T, you've got this individual who's aware of, interested in, and has empathy for the rest of us and the rest of what we do and the rest of the system or some greater purpose. And so by bringing in a T-shaped persona, you're actually bringing in a team player. So there's the connection, right? So this is like in Agile Scrum, it says, well, when you're on the Agile development team, you leave your ego and your job title at the door. You don't refer to yourself as developer, tester, etc. You're just part of the team, and we'll all swarm the problem if we need to. Cool kid words for collaborate, which is, again, back to the definition of collaborate. So the thing about a T-shaped persona is that they don't stay T very long. They actually morph over time into pie-shaped people because they start to develop other competencies, other areas of interest. Then they become comb-shaped people. And now we've got these, multi-capable people who are able to be very resilient in the context of a task or an objective. So when you're populating so-called teams, remember the key phrase: it's more important to hire for attitude than it is to hire for aptitude. Because if you're populating your teams with mercenaries, there is no hire us. What we want is patriots. Even if it's the best skilled person you have available. As the CEO of Netflix was once quoted, don't tolerate brilliant jerks. The cost of teamwork is too high, because there is no teamwork. So it's really about this sense of culture around the us. Even when we think about what it means to be innovative, this is an interesting observation. People often think, well, these brilliant people, they come up with great ideas, and I'm going to be able to kind of, use their ideas to leapfrog into the next whatever. Actually, research demonstrates that most of the creativity comes from the synergy of multiple people having multiple ideas. Diversity is a higher predictor of creativity than individual intelligence, especially if that person has a low EQ versus IQ. And this is well documented. This is an awesome book by Linda Hill from Harvard Business Review. And she talks about the recipe for true creativity and innovation is through teams that trust each other, not afraid to dust it up a little bit to kind of, get in there and have some creative abrasion. But the majority of innovation throughout history has come through team sport. Even where we have people with lots of so-called patents against their name, like Alexander Graham Bell, you do realize there was like a lab of like 100+ people working on this stuff, right? It wasn't just him. So it takes a village, folks, if you're actually going to be a team. That would be the definition of a team. Now, the next thing I want you to consider is, let's imagine we're creating this cross-functional sense of us. We're creating a structure that's engaging in us, that's trying to promote a culture of us. That's awesome. Equally important now is that if you're going to have a leader lead the us, the leadership style has to match the structural principles that you're trying to build into culture. Because if it doesn't, then this is going to cause you a problem. Think about this. You create this cross-functional team. You're saying you got all the requisite skills. We're giving you authority, folks, to make decisions, but yet we don't let them make decisions. Because the person who is the leader needs, to be the final arbitrator on all decisions, doesn't delegate authority, believes that leadership means being the uber engineer of all the engineers, which is, by the way, not the definition of leadership, and has a problem letting go of decisions, and believes they know the best situation and how to do it. This is leading with humility, folks, as a sensei, as a life coach, as a facilitator, not as a directive style. Because if I lead with directive style, I don't get the structural implications I'm hoping for. Because if you have a heavy-handed, kind of my way or the highway, and this is how we're going to do it, because my job is to be the uber engineer of all the engineers, and you got yourself a self-managing us structure you're trying to formulate, what's going to overpower what? Leadership style will completely smother structural goals. So if you're going to create this sense of us and the sense of team and transcendent purpose with, autonomous type of management, you need to also make sure your leadership style aligns with it. So here's the rub, folks. Leaders create culture. Lack of leadership is also a cultural enabler, just not the kind we're looking for. We're balancing between two extremes in this conversation. Leaders need to connect their people to some greater purpose so that they might, maybe, with an opportunity, subordinate the impulse to a personal bias or a personal objective to a greater good. So if that's, happening, then we might actually be and work as a team, where I value shared truth over the right of individual freedom or the good of the union. But the reality is, both extremes on this model kill community. There is no us. And this is the problem, because this only happens if we lead for it. And it doesn't happen if we don't. You want to see an organization that's working well as a sense of us, a team, a greater sense of us beyond, the functional department. You've got an organization at the top of the house who is setting the tone for your culture, working well. In essence, we replicate the culture we grow up in. The people here basically act like the people here. So if you've got a very divisive senior leadership team that can't even agree that we should even agree across silos, well, that's how the individuals at the bottom of the organization will work for the most part. Because there's going to be some people who got to get a job done. What they're going to do is interesting. They're going to find individuals in other functional areas that will actually be willing to collaborate with them, and they will know those individuals, and they'll put them on their proverbial speed dial, their favorites on their contact list. There are people in different groups that you will call if you need something done, right? A solid favor, and you'll call them up, and they'll take empathy, and they'll listen, and they'll help, because these are T-shaped individuals. But there are also people in those groups you would never call, because their sense of us is limited to maybe even just themselves, let alone their immediate function. This sense of culture, this sense of community, is going to be majorly impactful on whether you can actually achieve mission goals or not, share process or not, share tools or not. I mean, it gets so crazy, folks. I go into some organizations and they buy the same tool from the same vendor multiple times just because the other team wouldn't give them access to it. Come on, that's insane. But we do it. So kind of closing us off here. Redefining operational excellence through the lens of this session. Okay, this is a great book, Andrew Miller, and he's talking about some of the things we just discussed in a more official, formal tone. And he says, okay, you guys want to do, good stuff. You want to master strategy. Awesome. There are 3 things you got to get aligned. All right. You need your harmony of belief and practice. We need common priorities, and we need to hold each other mutually accountable. Sound familiar? It's the definition of a team. Now, if all 3 of those things are actually true, well, we're rocking the boat here. Come on, we're getting execution excellence. If 2 of these things are true, but not all 3, struggling, right? This is, all 3 have to be true. Or what about just finding the right people, keeping those people, and kind of encouraging those people to actually have meaningful contribution, right? This is another concept that will be a major aspect of your culture of us. So the 3 things that he identifies here that would need to be true, critical success factors, would be an attitude and passion for this outcome, this transcendental purpose, mission-driven goal. Like, we the people are going for that, right? The sense of collaboration. I mean, we're all in. We're in on the goal, we're in on the risk. We've merged and we're one, right? As opposed to you do you, I'll do me, and as long as it works for me, we're great. Otherwise, I'm out of here. That would be the us trust. And then, of course, we need the competency. We need to demonstrate that if we're going to be on the team, that I have the right skills, knowledge, and ability to fill the role you expect of me. And if I've got all 3, again, we're rocking it, right? And we're bringing in the best people, and we're creating massive impact in the market. Any one of the 2, but not all 3, we're struggling. So this sense, folks, of culture, I'm going to go back to an opening statement here. Why is it so hard to do basic things like, can we please agree on one common way to do support or manage change or do anything on the service management kind of list? It's not because we don't lack the knowledge. Well, we've got more books than we can shake a stick at. It's not because we don't lack intelligence. I mean, you guys are awesomely intelligent. That's not a problem. It's not because we don't have the resources and the money. It's not certainly because we don't have the tools. We don't want to. We don't have the organizational will, the culture, and the leadership. I wish that there was something else I could tell you that's the core issue, but a problem half defined as a problem half solved. And one more book, one more course, one more conference isn't going to solve this. We've got to look it square in the eyes and understand what our true constraints are. Some thoughts to take away, some content to consider in respect to the discussion we've had today. But I've really enjoyed the opportunity to share with you what's near and dear and on my heart. And so thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, Don and Charlie. Very much appreciated.
Troy, this was such a timely topic. I find it amazing, yes, when you talked about the will to make change, meaningful change. I think that that's key. And so many would really rather buy a tool that is going to perceive solving the problem than really understanding what are we really trying to solve together.
That so works, right? This time it's going to be different, right? What's the definition of insanity, Don?
I just have to say, I am living the dream right now.
So Mindy, what is your take on that? Do you have any questions or comments for Troy?
No, it's just like you said, oh, if we buy this tool, everything's going to be right. No, that's not true. Yeah,
Why are we
it's people, process, technology, data, right? Yeah. It's trying to get them, oh, well, when we move to, this tool, it'll be good. No, it's I'm in that,
Leadership.
yeah, I'm in that circle right now.
The leadership circle?
No, the circle of, that the tool isn't going to solve all the problems.
Oh,
We have to
that's
tell
a
the tool,
drain. That circle is a drain.
yeah, I don't want to say, a fool with a tool, but it's one of my favorite sayings.
It's true. So
You know,
other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Troy, you hit it right on the head when you said the us and the us concept. Looking at this is because we do buy separate tools and we do other things that aren't something that will support us and ultimately obtaining our end goal. There's a problem, and we need to find once again a way to really just come together and start sharing across the orgs. We're not just silos anymore. And because our mission is so much different than it was, as you mentioned, 25 years ago, when we were thinking IT specific and how to run services, we're now looking at how to truly run and operate enterprises. And enterprises is not something that's domestic. We're looking at global organizations now. And we're not necessarily as an organization, meaning IT, just simply supporting IT services. We're supporting clients and the things that clients depend upon in order to support their own businesses. So we need to really think about what you brought here today with regards to that whole Venn diagram, with regards to the capability commitment and all of that stuff. And how do we pull all of that together in order to really be an organization that really drives forward to benefit the organization. But I really do value, and I thank you for some of the points that you made today. They were right on point of pulling IT together from the basic atomic level up to looking at what the enterprise strategy needs to have in order to be successful.
Based on this, I'd like to leave this comment. This is an article I wrote that basically was the genesis of much of what we're discussing today. These are the 5 questions that I've come up with, basically, that an organization would have to be able to work through. And it's part of the conversation with Mindy that you just had. An organization to have any common anything would have to actually be able to work through these 5 questions. Can we agree that agreeing is even a thing? Is that even a thing across silos?
Right.
Question 2. Now that we agreed in principle, we should agree. Can we agree on one way to do it? We've got like 5 right now. Third question. Now that we agreed in principle, we're going to do that one thing one way. Please, 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 can we not make it over bureaucratic? Keep it simple. Keep it practical. Now you agreed in principle, we should do it in a single way and a lean approach. Can we please do it on one tool? There's like 6.
Right. That's brilliant.
And then the 5th question is, can we please understand there's an integrated system of management, which requires an integrative system of automation, and that we teach integration to our customers, but yet we buy point solutions and best of breeds for every single thing. Can we understand that that's not a viable approach?
Right. It's very true.
Here's the thing, Don, is that most organizations I work with can't even get past question 1.
Correct.
And all of those are cultural leadership questions.
Thanks, Mindy.
Even the tool ones.
Yeah. It does come down to leadership. And really, there is a cost of not asking these questions and, more importantly, aligning on their answers. Therein lies the challenge. It's a lot easier, it seems, to get a budget line expense to invest in a new tool than it is to create the five question levels of alignment to move change. Profound.
We know the
So does-
problem.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we had a really good discussion here with you, Troy, today. I know Don wants to thank you for sure. Happy birthday, Don, by the way, again.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, Troy, for taking time out and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us, because it's something that that makes this place and make this organization what it is, because we have professionals like yourself who shares what you have and what you know and your experiences with us. So thank you for gracing our league with your presence and your
My
your
pleasure.
delivery.
Thank you.
I have one more cycle round because we hadn't had a chance. Liz, did you have any closing thoughts or questions that you'd like to ask or share?
You know, what I grapple with on this topic is, you know, sometimes it's appropriate to lead with authority, and sometimes it's appropriate to lead by influence. And I prefer the latter in most cases, because best practices speak for themselves. The numbers speak for themselves. Successes speak for themselves. But I have found when it comes to some of the procurement flavored things we've talked about here, sometimes hiring, you know, key hires, sometimes authority is sort of necessary. So that's just been kind of my personal story when it comes to reducing duplication, and when it comes to, you know, tooling selection decisions and all of that. It's really hard to do that by influence, even though that's the way I would prefer to do it. You know, if your CTO or CIO does not have some sort of oversight in terms of purchasing, then it's really, really hard to collapse that and to consolidate.
That's really an interesting thought too, Liz. With that, Troy, I would ask from that, how do we keep ourselves out of the way? Because, you know, when you're thinking about your role in the traditional boxy org chart, or your role in a particular consultancy or project, there is a finite level of partnership overshadowed by our natural human nature. And I think for everyone that's the case. How do we keep that focus? How do we return to that level of partnership? Have you got ideas on that?
So let's talk good, better, best. So best is we have a leadership team that's shoulder to shoulder on common goals. In fact, they have come together to define a target state, a mission, purpose. They've established priorities. They've made it clear that this is what we, the people, find self-evident and true, and how we're going to do it. Follow me, we're going. That's called leadership, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because it's hard to actually go where you haven't actually defined and you haven't had someone in authority say that's our priority, and we're all going to do that together so that we pull actually in the same direction. That's called building alignment. Now, if that doesn't happen, and I'm going to put out there that most of the time it does not. I mean, I work with a university situation where the chancellor of the university doesn't believe it's their job to bring the schools and faculty together in a common set of goals and missions towards a common set of priorities to say we're going there as a team. In my opinion, that's an abdication of leadership.
Right. Yes.
Because that's the very definition of leadership, that they're saying that's not my job.
Yes, correct.
Right. So let's imagine that's your reality, which unfortunately it can often be. In fact, in my opinion, most of the time is, because we confuse engineering with leadership. Those are not the same things.
Right. No,
Now,
they're not at all.
what do we do if we don't have that? And again, most of the time we don't. Well, the alternative is what we have, which is middle in. So a group of people on a league say, this makes sense. This is logic. This is the better thing we need to do for the greater mission. And you find yourself a coalition of the willing. And that is the purview or the scope of your ability to transform. Right. So you come in and you do what you can do within the authority and purview you do have for influence, to Liz's point. But a key point of that is that you have to be very, very open and transparent about what's going on, why, and you have to be very good at marketing the outcomes and the benefits. Because what you're looking at and for is an opportunity to sell up so that you can then sell wide, right? Or wider. And so up wider until we get to the tipping point where Malcolm Gladwell says, you know, in come the laggards who would never come unless otherwise forced. But
Right.
because you'll never convince them, by the way. It's only going to happen through momentum. But the reality is, when you do your marketing, please remember there's two types of marketing. These are the wonderful things we've done from mission goals, and then here's what we've done, rub your nose in it. Because if you use a shame wall, yes, as a basis for ain't I great and we're just awesome and you guys aren't, you've destroyed your whole sense of forward momentum.
This is so good. And thank you, Troy. It's just, you're a delight. And thank you for sharing what you have. Any closing thoughts or questions?
Again, I've said I was going to say thank you, Troy, for joining us. Once again, you're always welcome to come back. Thank you, Dawn, for introducing us to Troy. And Troy, once again, hopefully you can join us and hear other speakers as well. Once again, I'm quite sure you have crossovers with some of those as well that we'll have in the future. And I would love to have you just join in and take part in our community as we have other speakers similar to yourself, so that we can all grow and grow stronger as a community. Thank you.
I'm trying to launch a poll. I don't know if it works to you guys or not. Do you guys see a poll coming up?
I do.
Okay. One of the things I'd like your feedback on, best days and times to have a meeting, where you'd like to be involved. One of the things we're challenged with right now is just figuring out what our present market is. It's very clear it's changed from before, but it isn't clear what it's changed to. So we'd love to have your input on best dates, times, and where you'd like to be involved and what topics you'd like to get involved with. And with that, I would like to thank you all for dialing in. And Troy, this is just so necessary for all of us. And I'm already getting great feedback. A few people had to drop early for other meetings, but they've also sent their thanks for what you've shared. Let's continue the dialogue in these meetings and ever forward. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
I'm going to try to leave the poll open, and I am going to end the call, and I'm hoping you have a chance to participate from that. If not, I will be sending similar with the recording that we send out. Thank you, everybody.